You're listening to Living with Lewy. Okay, and welcome back to this edition of Living with Lewy. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing a American who lives abroad. Her name is Jacquelyn. Jacquelyn has a unique set of circumstances that she's kind of dealing with a double whammy with something called PCA along with her Lewy body. And so I'm going to say good morning, Jacquelyn.
Good morning, Larry. How are you?
I am great, and I'd like for you to go ahead and explain what you're having to deal with, because I think it's very interesting.
So, I have a rare early onset dementia, which is called posterior cortical atrophy. And this is very unique in the world of dementia. Many people don't know that there are more than one type of dementia. There are actually over 100 types of dementia. So, not every dementia presents in the same way. Not all start with memory issues or cognitive problems. So, with PCA, it's called the visual variant of Alzheimer's. Patients are going to present with some sort of visual problem. And that's why it's so hard to diagnose. You're going to have some odd visual problems. You're not really going to think that something is wrong in your brain. 80% of the PCA patients have an underlying diagnosis of ultimate Alzheimer's. The remaining 20% have either Lewy body dementia, corticobasal syndrome, or prion disease. I happen to have the double whammy of PCA and Lewy body. So I don't really have a lot of cognitive or memory problems at this point. I have more tremors and twitches, and we'll get to that. Because of the early symptoms being so vague, it often takes 1 to 3 years to diagnose it. And really, until you get to a neurologist in a brain scan, it's very unlikely that a general practitioner or another physician is going to diagnose it. So let's get into my early symptoms and how unusual they are and how it gets you to, in my case, I think 5 different doctors, which is crazy. So my earliest symptoms were blurred vision, and I had a real problem seeing the gas flames on my stove. So I didn't realize, especially in daylight, that I had left the burners on. And in the gas oven, I couldn't really see if the gas flames were on. So initially I thought I had just forgotten to turn the stove off, but as the disease progressed and I understood that this is very visual, I realized that I simply couldn't see the blue flame. Then I started to have tinnitus. So I had this constant ringing in my ears, which sent me to 2 different ENT doctors, the first of whom told me I was a type A, no kidding. And he said I likely had TMJ and I needed to meditate.
What is
So
TMJ?
it's the problem with your jaw.
Okay.
It's like your jaw is out of alignment. So I didn't want to laugh in his face, but I left the office and I said to my GP, do not ever send a woman to that doctor again. And I went to another doctor, a young female whippersnapper, who put a camera in my ear and looked around, and I could see it on the screen. And she said, there's no structural reason for your tinnitus, but let's send you for a sinus CT to make sure that you don't have a sinus problem that's, causing this. Of course, the sinus CT was fine. Then I had a problem swallowing. It felt like not every day. Now, all of these symptoms are really not every day. They come and go, except the tinnitus is still pretty much every day. So I had this swallowing problem, and it felt like something was stuck in my throat. And so off I went to my gastroenterologist, who did an endoscopy, didn't see any obstructions in the esophagus, and said, well, maybe you have acid reflux, gave me some acid reflux medication, which Of course, it wasn't acid reflux. Uh, as you get into this disease, you understand that you often have issues with the autonomic nervous system, and so swallowing issues becomes just one of those symptoms. I had problems driving. Now, living abroad, I don't drive here. I live in a very walkable city. It's very convenient. But when I go back to the US to visit my family and friends, I drive. And so, starting, I would say 3 years ago, I noticed real problems, not with driving the car, but with parking the car. And so I would try to parallel park and I couldn't judge the distance. And then I was way off of the curb. And I grew up in New England. I'm the queen of parallel parking. So to have this parking issue all of a sudden was very strange. And so I started to accommodate, and I wouldn't try to park in between cars. I would just drive farther down the block where I could just easily not have to deal with distance or judging, am I too close to a car, and pull at a curb where no one was around me. And the same thing in a parking lot. Okay, I'm having trouble parking in between two cars. So I'll just go to the end of the parking lot where no one is around me. So, driving problems is really one of the earliest symptoms because you're having problems judging distance. I also started having problems playing games. This is a funny story because I love to play games. I'm very competitive. I actually worked for a toy and game company a long time ago. And I had to play games all day, every day, testing various games. So my
What a
friends
job. I
knew.
mean, where do I sign up for that?
I know. I know. You think it's a great job until you've played the same game, 20 times, 3 days in a row, and you're supposed to be finding out if people like this game before you bring it to market. So it sounds glamorous
But it
until you're just really tired of
loses
playing
its
the game.
sparkle.
It does. It does. It does. It really does. So the games that I was having problems with involved small game pieces like dominoes. We played Mexican train dominoes a lot. And in Mexican train, they are dominoes and they're also different colored dots on the dominoes. Another game called Blockus, they're also small game pieces, but they're different shapes and different colors. So my issue really was game pieces that have shapes, different dots, different colors. And these were very familiar games to me. And all of a sudden, I'm having problems. I'm having problems with the pieces. I think they're different pieces. I think they're different numbers on the dominoes, and I'm not winning anymore. And it's a joke. My friends are saying, "Are you letting us win?" And I just laugh. I think, as if I would let you win? Don't be ridiculous. And again, I think that it's memory related because this is early on. And I think, okay, I've got the beginning of dementia, like my family. I think it's memory related. I'm having problems strategizing 2 or 3 steps ahead. But no, it's issues with the shapes and the colors and the dots. It's a visual problem. Then I'm having smell hallucinations, and primarily I would smell skunk. So
That's not
these
very
are
pleasant.
mostly, it's not pleasant. It's not
No.
pleasant. But you know what it is, it's very distinct.
Yeah.
So the smell hallucinations would be mostly in the evening. So it would be dark and I'm smelling skunk and I open the slider, go out on my terrace. Of course, I'm looking for a skunk. And then I called downstairs to my neighbor, also American, and I said, "Do you smell skunk?" She said, "No, I don't smell skunk." I said, "Go out on your terrace and tell me if you smell skunk." No, no skunk. As it turns out, there are no skunks in this country. They don't exist. So, so I'm smelling things that just they don't exist. And that
Right.
was
Not
my
even
very
them.
first, right. That was my very first smell hallucination. But again, I'm not putting any of this together. The next was I started to have muscle twitches, but only in my right big toe. And I've had a couple of back surgeries because of car accidents. I actually have 4 screws in my back. So off I went to the neurosurgeon who did another MRI. He said, "There's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. Everything is the same. I don't know why you're having those muscle twitches." He gave me some Lyrica. "Make sure you take this every day. You can't just take it when you have a twitch." Okay, fine. And then when I go back to the US, every time I go back, I have an eye exam to get a new prescription. So I was having blurred vision, and I went to the eye doctor. I was in Salt Lake City visiting my daughter. I went to the doctor and I said, "I'm having blurred vision. I live abroad. Every year when I'm in the US, I get my eye exam, get my new prescription." And I said, "I'm really having some blurred vision, so I know that I need a stronger prescription. I wear both contacts and progressive lenses." And he did the exam and he said, "There's nothing wrong with your eyes. I see no reason for the blurred vision. And actually, your prescription is a little bit on the strong side. So, if anything, if I were going to change your prescription, I would back it up a little bit on the power." And I said, "Oh, no, no. There's definitely something wrong. And I'm having blurred vision. So, you're definitely not reducing the power of my prescription. Goodbye. Thank you very much." But I was arguing with him a little bit that there was definitely something wrong. And I made an appointment for another doctor and on to the next doctor and said the same thing. And the next doctor said the same thing. "There's nothing wrong. There's no organic reason for your blurred vision. Have a nice day."
Mm-mm.
And I would say the two symptoms that are very typical in the beginning is the blurred vision and the problems driving.
Right.
They're both
And that's like a depth
right.
perception issue with the
It
driving.
is. It is absolutely depth perception. It's a visual spatial problem. That was the problem with
Hmm.
playing the games. It's visual spatial. And also, you're going to start to fall. So you're going to have some clumsiness. In my case, in the past year and a half, I have fallen down the stairs twice. I have just fallen generally once. And in the course of all of that, I broke my foot in 2 places. I broke my wrist in 3 places, and I broke 2 fingers. So I would say you're going to see a lot of clumsiness. Maybe you're going to have problems pouring things. You might be pouring your coffee and you spill it on the counter because of depth perception. You think the cup is in a different place than it really is. So the whole point of this, Larry, isn't the whole point to bring awareness to those early symptoms that just don't seem related to anything.
I think that
You're
is
just
that's
all of
exactly
it.
what we're both trying to accomplish is to increase the awareness and certainly people being better able to convey the early symptoms to their medical team is paramount, I think, in getting a proper diagnosis.
Right. Because you and I both belong to a lot of support groups, online support groups, and we see a number of things. We see people who are told by their physicians, "There's nothing wrong with you." People are being told, "Oh, no, you don't have dementia." I have stopped using the word dementia because it has such a not only a negative connotation, but when you say, "I have a rare early onset dementia," people focus on the word dementia. And then they start to microanalyze the way you're speaking, your behavior, your memory. And my memory is pretty good. You can see my cognitive abilities, my speech, it's fine. And so what happens is when I say I have dementia, people say, "You don't have dementia. You don't sound like you have dementia." And they want to argue with your diagnosis. So just recently, I have started saying, "I have a rare neurological disorder that affects my visual spatial abilities." And it's amazing how just changing how I describe my disease changes the perception
Hmm.
in the public or among my friends. They go, oh, okay, and they just get on with it. They don't start to micro analyze what I'm doing or what I'm saying. So I encourage people, yes, it is a dementia, but maybe the way you describe it will affect the way people react to it.
I think that's interesting how people's perception of what's going on changes based on the terminology that you use to describe it. I think that's really interesting that you change things and and realize just what a difference that makes. I mean, the difference between dementia and saying that you have a rare neurological condition. I think that that's interesting to me how that changes and perceptions are altered with just the difference of a word. People that are close to you and have some medical knowledge,
Mhm.
they still have preconceived notions as to what the causes are and what it should look like.
Right. And I see people in the support groups suggesting herbs and these supplements. So I guess the part that I skipped is this is a progressive disease. There is no treatment, there is no cure. It is going to progress. And depending on the person, I see some people progress in 4 years. The average is 8 years. Some people may live longer than that. But for me, I don't view life as ending when my body dies. In my opinion, my life will end for me when I no longer have my cognitive abilities, my physical abilities, when my autonomic system, shuts down. But let's talk about some of the next symptoms that people are very likely to have. And these are the things that I've experienced, let's say, in the past year or two. And it is progressive. And a lot of these things no one else would see or understand. But I continue to have hallucinations. I had really a terrifying, terrifying sleep hallucination or part of REM sleep disorder. I don't even know what you call it, but I had those huge,
Frightening
curly,
dreams.
frightening dreams. Mine was like the sheep with the curled horns. I don't know what that breed is called, but
Rams.
they were yeah, trampling me in my bed, and it was so real and it was terrifying. And so you have a dream like that or a hallucination like that, and you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. And then I haven't had another one for 6 months. So this is a disease that is not, you have these same symptoms or same issues every day.
No, it's
Every day is, yeah, every day is a crapshoot. You have no idea
I
what the
have
next
said
day is going to
many
be.
I've said many times that uh, the the thing that fascinates me about this is that you never know what you have till you get up, and even then it can change at any time during the day.
Right, right, exactly. I have a terrible time distinguishing coins in my hand. I live in a country where everything is a coin until you get to the five, let's call it dollar, $5 currency. Everything below a five is a coin. And I have a terrible time distinguishing coins. And I was in a shop the other day and the item cost, let's 175. And I pulled out all my coins and I looked at my hand and I just said to myself, just don't even try. And I handed my handful of coins to the cashier and let her pick out what she needed. And, in the grand scheme of things, is that important? No. It's inconvenient, but it's not one of the symptoms that is just critical, to life. I joke that we've talked about this, one of the tests that doctors like to do is, can you draw a clock? Seems to be their favorite test. Oh,
Yes,
let's see if you can draw a clock and, put the arms of the clock at 3 o'clock or whatever they'll tell you. Well, I can draw a clock, but I can't tell the difference between a quarter and a nickel. So,
yeah,
so I think about the test that people are experiencing, and the doctor saying, "Well, you can draw a clock, you're fine," but you're really not.
No,
You know, I made,
it's like a
I
one
made,
size fits all type approach, you know.
right. And one of the symptoms is you don't see things that are right in front of you. And I had a perfect example yesterday. As you know, I have a friend coming from the States this week. So I was making some breakfast cookies to just have for her. And I set out all the ingredients on my kitchen counter. I had everything measured out, portioned out. And yesterday morning, I made the cookie dough and put it in the freezer. And as I was cleaning up, I saw the bowl of spices sitting on the counter. There it was.
I
I
I'm
just
I am
didn't see
chuckling
it.
only because I went to make chocolate chip cookies and followed the recipe. Well, you know, it tells you to mix all these ingredients in a bowl, then it says set that bowl aside. Then it says to
Right,
mix all these other ingredients in a bowl and dip them out onto the baking pan. At no point did it
right.
say combine the two bowls. And that never registered in my mind. And I ended up with these fudge swirl mess in my oven. And I just scraped it off into the dry ingredients and went ahead and made cookies. I ended up with swirled chocolate chip cookies. But yeah,
Right,
I found that to be interesting that you left the spices out.
right.
Well, listen, we
And
are
I
running
have,
short on time for this
okay,
episode. So I would like to certainly uh, let's continue this because I think that your story is definitely a good one and one that will help many listeners.
very good. Thanks, Larry. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. We'd like to thank you for joining us for this edition of Living with Lewy.